did you have a specific resource or person as like a primary like support system during your time, especially in those last few years?
The answer is not a great one. Like I had, I mean, obviously I use CAPS, like the basically counseling and psychological services that UCSD provided, but they're so busy, like they can only kind of meet with you like once a month. And generally it's more generic advice, which I found with therapy is like kind of a common theme is that they give you really generic advice. It's like less targeted towards like what you really need. And that's kind of like interestingly enough, like I'm looking for now, like I'm looking for more like targeted therapy because I can't find a therapist that I like because they're all so general. So anyway, that was kind of the start of my like therapy. Like I was started trying therapists in college, and I mean it was okay. Like it gave me someone to talk to, but it wasn't really helpful that much, like in that sense. And then, oh my gosh, literally, this is so dumb. So the guy who was our mental health guy on our team, who, as I said, like would come and talk to us like once every other week or whatever it was, he was like, guys, come, like, please come and talk to me like anytime, you need to talk about something. Like, I'm here, I'm a resource for you. Of course, I go and talk to him about like some issues I was having with my coach. And then my coach knows about it and like brings it up. And I'm like, dude, like, was supposed to be between us. Like it was confidential. Like you can't just go and tell my coach what I said about her. So then it's like then it becomes a situation of like, okay, well, I'm not gonna tell you things if you're gonna like totally disregard my trust. I mean everything. So as far as resources I had, not great ones. I would say the best were my family, which I'm just so grateful to have them. Like I know not everyone has their family and people that they can rely on. So honestly, it was like all the credit to my parents for like taking my calls and like being there to listen because like and then obviously I had some like issues with my friends. So it was like sometimes I didn't want to tell my friends because like you don't want to put that burden on them either. Um and it's like it just becomes a lot if you're doing it all the time. So unfortunately, I did feel like pretty alone at the time and there wasn't a lot of outlet, but I did have some people. It was just like the people that were close to me, and generally I found like you just have to be careful what you're saying, like with what you're saying to the people around you, especially if they're involved with the team, because things just get around. Like that's just how it works. So you just have to kind of be careful in that sense. And unfortunately, not a great experience with the support system dealing with that.
I'm interested and more so curious in this next question because I find it fascinating on a case by case basis. But when you look at success from more so being a student athlete in your time in college, I mean, what's your true definition of success look like for you, especially in the face of challenges, injuries, diagnosis that didn't go in your favor, and also a lack of support too? I mean, what does success look like ultimately for you when you left the college scene?
I think this is an interesting one because totally changed over the years, of course. Like freshman year success is like doing well, leaving a legacy on the program, like being a good soccer player. And I think by the time you leave, it's just like success is having fun in like the program that you wanted to be in. And like you did that, like you achieved your goal and you got to the place you want. Like just enjoy it, just have fun. And I think a lot of the time I was at UCSD, I had so much fun. Like I enjoyed all like most of the time that I was outside of a soccer setting. And unfortunately, like half the time the soccer setting was just like crazy stressful and I just couldn't enjoy it. Like it wasn't my outlet anymore. It was just like this like kind of toxic environment. And it was just like I unfortunately heard that from so many of my friends who played soccer as well. It's like there were just such a select group of athletes, especially in the women's game, that enjoy, every moment of their college career and their time and their sport. And it wasn't too much. Like, it's honestly so hard to get that perfect storm because there's just too much of everything, or like, there's too much of something almost all of the time when it comes to college sports. Like, I think even the practice schedule is too much. Like, no one should be working that hard or like your body needs rest. And I think mentally, physically, like even if you have film days or rest days, like you need to get away and take time away and make sure that you're not just it's not constantly on your mind because it totally overtakes you. So for me now, like it would just be to enjoy it. And it's so hard to like tell someone that's going into it, like, oh, just enjoy it, be like, whatever. Because it's it's such a high stress situation. Like you're expected to do so much and you're expected to succeed. And when you do succeed, you're expected to maintain it. And when you fail, you're expected to get better. It's just like it's constant pressure. And that is so tough. And I think that we've kind of lost sight of like, oh, this is supposed to be really fun and like really great. And we love this sport. Like a lot of the girls I played with did not ever watch soccer outside of soccer. Like they just like didn't love the sport. And like I do and I still do, but it's just crazy to see how much it's just like it's almost like a robotic thing. Like we're doing this thing every day and we have to get there and all this stuff. And I just think it should be more enjoyable. And there are some programs that are like that, but I would say more often than not, people have a bad experience and it changes them and informs who they are. And it's not a bad thing. Like it teaches you a lot about yourself. But I think honestly the goal should just be to enjoy it, and that should be enough. It doesn't have to be like breaking records, and it doesn't have to be like one-upping all these people, and it should just be simple in my opinion, and totally different from my perspective like 4 years ago, but that's kind of what I've taken away.
I think that also goes in par with you growing as a person and better understanding yourself throughout those 4 years, that you're able to come to that like consensus looking back and understanding what true success looks like to you as a student athlete. But building off of some of the responses that you just stated, dealing with like pressure and especially like performance pressure is a common aspect across all sports. So how did you specifically manage these pressure situations, and what advice would you give to the next student athlete?
I mean, I love pressure. Like, I think it's awesome. I think it's great. I think it pushes you to be your best self. And what do they say? Like, pressure makes a diamond, right? You just gotta grind. I think in high school, I was always put in the pressure situations. Like, I was always the penalty taker, like the free kick taker, like the person who was doing the thing that no one else wanted to do. And it was just like, it was just a great feeling when you can kind of like overcome it and be able to come out on the other side stronger. And it's like, even if you mess up, like you mess up sometimes and you learn from it. And it's just like the fact that you were able to get through it, handle the pressure, and come out on the other side is what's important. Honestly, people who have the hardest time in college sports are those who like put so much pressure on themselves to do well, or like are so nervous all the time. Like there were always like there's always girls on the team who are always like very nervous and like will not want to make a mistake and will not want to take risks. And I think that's what gets you down the most, like because you'll never be able to develop into the player that you want to be because you're always holding yourself back. And also the coaches totally play into that because they'll pull you off the field or yell at you if you make one single mistake. And it's like that's not how the environment should be. It should be like I should be encouraged to take risks and make mistakes at practice. And like and it was honestly like if you didn't run the right direction in the game, like they would pull you out. And like soccer in my opinion should be more like improv. It shouldn't be like you have to touch the ball this way, which is like what I felt like it was like on my team. So I think high pressure situations are great, and you just kind of have to run with them and like just do the best you can, and then whatever comes out of that comes out of it, and you just have to be proud of yourself for doing it. But like the last thing I say is like run away from it. Like I say you dive straight in and you just go for it and see what happens, and like that always worked for me. Like it always made me feel confident and kind of made me into the athlete that I became because I was never afraid to pass a ball or get into a tackle or shoot a ball. Like what would happen, like it could only go one way or the other. It's just like you just have to get your reps in and like continue performing, and then eventually it's going to work out. Unfortunately, I think there is a lot of pressure in the college game, and it comes from ourselves, it comes from the coaches, but I think it should be flipped on its head to like a positive thing rather than something that's constantly tearing people down and making them terrified to do anything wrong.
At the end of the day, you got to embrace the pressure and just take it in strides with what's thrown at you and kind of just go with the flow. But for you specifically, too, I mean, now that you've actually had the opportunity to fully transition out of sports and out of the college scene itself, what skills, what different things were you able to successfully deploy within your day-to-day life that made that transition successful for you?
It was kind of a weird transition for me because I think initially you don't really realize because you don't feel like you're missing out on anything. You're like, oh, I just like my time frees up because I don't have as much practice or I don't have anything to like prepare for in that way. And but when it really got hard was like the next year when I saw my team like in season and I was like, oh shoot, like I'm not there. And that's crazy. And it's actually starts to hit you when you see all the games and you're like, I'm actually not there and I'm not part of it. It was hard. I think there's like a part of you that, wants them to succeed, but also there's a part of you that's like pulling you the other direction, like based on the experience you had. Like it's hard for me. It was like hard to like root for my coach because like she wasn't a great coach, but I like obviously love the girls, so I want to root for the girls. It's just like totally conflicting. So it was kind of a weird transition out, but ultimately like definitely better for me, my health, my sake. Like it was a very, I could have taken a fifth year, but it was like a very personal decision for me, like specifically that it was pretty unique to me because like people don't usually like I mean maybe they do drop out because of like health problems and things, but that was like the main reason that I kind of stopped playing was because I was like I need to focus on myself and actually give myself time to heal. So that made the transition a lot easier for me mentally just because I was able to kind of like give it reason and like obviously a lot of my friends are transitioning out as well, so it was kind of like we just banded together and we're like, okay, we have all this like free time. Like, what are we going to do? What are we going to fill our time with? And I think to a certain point, you can fill a lot of your time, but then you just kind of have to sit with yourself and be like, wow, like I do miss that environment. I do miss the sport. And it's like, even if you don't miss waking up at 7 a.m. for practice every morning, like you do miss seeing your best friends every morning and like going to practice and just being in that environment. And like, you don't get that on a regular basis. And you don't get to play all the time. You don't get to play soccer every day. So just being able to put yourself in those positions as much as you can outside of the sport setting, like join a league or whatever of like whatever sport you play, or like try to kind of get involved with like a different group of friends or something that will kind of fill that void and just make you feel like give you that like team aspect. Cause I mean, that's one of the reasons I love soccer the most is because of the people I've met and the team that I had like my entire life. I mean, I've just had great teams. So being able to kind of fill that void of the team like aspect that you're missing in your life, that's kind of like the biggest drop off and what I lost the most, I would say. And it's honestly hard to keep in touch with all those girls because as much as you're friends with all of them and you want to see them and you want to talk to them, it's like it's realistically you're not going to stay in touch with 30-35 girls. It's just not going to happen, especially of like all different ages and all different points of life. That's probably the advice I would give, just try to like mimic that team aspect, but it's honestly tough. It's a tough transition. You've been doing it your whole life and it's not going to be easy or comfortable, and you just kind of have to take that next step and do that next phase of life, whether that's a job or school or whatever else you're doing.
I think that's great advice, especially to those athletes that are looking at their graduation date and just not knowing, not in a spot they're lost. They don't know what to do next. I think that's great advice. And I think lots of athletes should go down that path if they're looking to fill that void with their time. But building off of that, I know we kind of touched upon this with the last question, but if there was like one thing that you could leave for like a message or an impact to these student athletes, what would that be?
It's hard because I feel like going back and telling my younger self anything that I know now, I'd just be like, eh, you know, like I'll be fine, like, I'll figure it out, or like that's not gonna happen to me or whatever. Honestly, I would just say like try to show up every day with a smile on your face and try to enjoy like some aspect of practice or whatever you're doing. I think there's always a positive in everything and you choose how you want to show up. I think a lot of people think like, oh, my circumstances dictate like how I'm going to show up or who I am, but it's like really that's all you. You're going to decide how you feel every day, and even if you feel terrible, you can put a smile on your face and make other people not feel as bad. And I think that was a lot of like a main thing that I learned was that it was really hard for me to be positive in the time that I was going through something really hard. And sometimes like it does bring other people down. It brings the team down. And I think sometimes need to put the team before yourself and kind of like put a positive face on. Even if you're not doing well or not everything's going your way, it's just like try to bring something positive to every single day and enjoy it. And like it goes back to what I said is like the most important thing, which is just like to try to enjoy your time in college athletics. Like it's hard for so many reasons, but it's also really cool and really great to be able to spend so much time with these amazing people and travel and do all these great things and commit to something for 4 years and all this stuff. Like there's so many positives. So just like even if you're having a hard time, just like try to fake it till you make it. And honestly, you'll look back and be grateful that you did because you'll probably made someone else feel better when they were having a tough day.
A lot of positives definitely to be thankful with, even on those longer days that are a little bit more challenging than the next. If you had to go back during those 4 years and share one or two favorite moments or experiences that you went through, whether it directly correlates to soccer or just being a student athlete in general, I mean, what were one or two of those moments?
There's a million, like there were so many great moments. I think kind of in a broader sense, like one of my favorite times of college was right when I got to UCSD. It was literally for 2 months. We kind of had like a unique situation. So it was basically there were only a few sports on campus and school starts really late for us. So there was like a lot of time for us to just be on campus because we were training, doing double days, and it was just like literally showing up, no one, and you just jump right into training. And literally all of the girls in my class, like my recruited class, we all lived in one apartment. And the boys soccer recruits literally lived across the hall from us, and like the water polo guys lived like next door, and it was like the basketball girls lived the other way. And like they just put all the athletes in one building. And like my school is so big. So there's like no way this happens in like any time throughout the school year. Like this is strictly like a preseason thing. And it was literally like had no idea who these people were and just showed up and spent every second of every day with them and literally just went to practice, like didn't know what to expect, had no expectations, just went in with an open mind, positivity, literally went to practice every day, took a nap in between practice, went to the second practice, like made dinner, went to watch like the sunset. Like we would walk to the cliffs, like Black's Beach cliffs, and like we would literally watch the sunset every night and just hang out. And it was like there was no school pressure, nothing. And it was like honestly some of the best times of my life. Like these people are still like my best friends to this day. And like getting to know them in such a unique environment where I was literally spending every second of every day with them, and everyone was on the same schedule. Like we were all doing the same thing. We all just wanted to be friends and wanted to have such a great experience together that everyone was so open-minded. And it was just like one of the best like times of my life. And I did that for like 2 months, which is like super unique. And then as far as like soccer goes, I had this crazy moment. Like we basically won the league, but like after league, there's like the conference championship. So you have to like go and play the best teams in the conference, and like whoever wins that wins the league. And we like got to the final and we're doing super well that season already, but playing like a rival. And literally it was like it was tied. And then like I think we were down or something and we tied it up. Like we started down and then we tied it up, and then the game went into overtime. And I scored a goal in overtime and it was golden goal. So it like ended the game and we won league. And it was literally so awesome. Like it was probably like way down on the list of like bangers that I've scored, but it was so awesome. Like everyone stormed the field and literally it was just crazy. And they had these like crazy like Instagram videos of it and like just all this. It was just like surreal. Like it was like stuff that, you see in like High School Musical or something, like something that's just not real. I mean, and that was my freshman year and it was just like a dream. And that was amazing. I mean, so many great moments, but a lot of just like hanging out with my teammates and spending time with people, playing a lot of Mafia games, just stuff like that. I mean, so many great memories, but yeah, those are definitely some highlights.
I think those are great memories. I think that's great. Just being able to watch you smile, just reliving it in your head right there was awesome. I think that was great. Looking back at your time as a student athlete, how do you think like technology especially like what we're building here at Fluid Sports Tech, could have like affected positively your experience as an athlete and as a student during your journey?
I think there's a lot of different things that something like the application could do. Something that I mentioned a lot was like when I did get injured, I felt like there was really no one else who had gone through the same thing that I had, and I know that that's not true. Like I know logically it's not true, but it was like I would have given anything to just talk to someone who had a similar experience, and I just didn't have that at the time. And like just someone to like talk to that would just know and would just like be like it's going to be okay. But like someone who had known what I had been through. Like obviously my parents were huge support systems for me, but they had no idea what the like condition even was. And we're going to do like my actual endocrinologist, like my thyroid doctor, like was not very helpful. Like just anyone to make me feel like a little less like by myself would have been great. I mean, I think just having that resource, that anything that would feel more personal to me, like something that would actually directly impact me and make me feel like someone was actually on the same wavelength that I was on, would I think would have impacted me a lot. It would have helped like my parents a lot. Like I think a lot of the times like these people that care about us so much, they really struggle when they're seeing you struggle and they don't know how to help. And I think just having some perspective from maybe athletes or someone who's been there before, or like anyone that maybe they could relate to, in the sense of like, oh, I understand what they're saying. Like maybe sometimes it was hard for me to get out how I was feeling, so just being able to be like, podcast, this is how I'm feeling, or like article, this is how I'm feeling, like literally like someone gets it, would just be huge. And I think just having some sort of resource where I knew like I could go to it or rely on it when I was having a really bad day or really hard time, or like I could do some breathing exercises or do something that could be helpful, or like I could actually take steps in the right direction to get better. Like a lot of the time I felt like it was just like a holding pattern, and it's just like, okay, like I'm struggling and it's just a waiting game and I just have to go to practice the next day and suffer and do it over and over and over and over. And it's like, what will break me out of that? Like, what will get me out of it? What will do so? Like, it's just so hard to see it when you're in the moment and you just feel like it's never ending. But it's like, if you have something that just goes in there and breaks up your routine a little bit or helps you out, or just like even a little thing daily that you can read, I mean, it would have been like a game changer, or like just anything that would change my perspective on my experience, how I saw going to practice every day, how I saw games as like an opportunity, like what could they be for? How could I impact in a game without being on the field? Like anything like that, that could have just like helped me show up to practice as like a better person, not even player, because it didn't even matter at that point. Like I didn't need to be a good player. Like I needed to be a good person. And it was like, how was I going to do that? And like just anything that would have helped with that could have really impacted my time. And obviously, I learned a lot and it took me time to get there, and I don't regret it. Like I wouldn't change anything, but I mean just having something during that time that could help me on so many, I mean all cylinders, like how I would impact my teammates, all the way to how I'm feeling or exercises that I could do every day. Like it just would have changed everything. Like if I could have just had some perspective. Like it's so hard to go back to that my former self and be like, have some perspective. But if you're able to like get perspective on it and someone's able to reach you, I mean, I think it just changes everything.
And going back to the point too about even like shared experiences, right? It's so much easier for me to not only trust somebody, but relate to someone when I know that they've gone through the same journey, the same struggles that I might have previously gone through, and that, hey, at the end of the day, they told me that, it might have took some time, but at the end of the day, they were fine, right? They were able to overcome those hurdles, those obstacles, and come out at the other end with a smile on their face and a positive attitude. So I want to give you the floor one last time for any last words of wisdom or encouragement that you'd like to leave to any of the listening student athletes.
Like I don't know who's gonna listen to this, if anyone, but my experience was not that unique or different. I think a lot of people go through hard things, and and at any stage in life, people who don't go through athletics as well. It just happened to, it happens to go through like a lot of us who go through athletics, just our hard times are during those times for whatever reason. I mean, I would just say, like, you're not like, no one's invincible. Like, I think I kind of thought I could like avoid a lot of issues for a long time. And I think it's just like it catches up to everyone eventually. And it's like, don't be afraid to ask for help. Literally, like, if anyone is listening to this and like feels like they relate at all to me, like, literally do not hesitate to reach out. Like, I will always be open to accepting, anyone who wants to talk, like anything about it. I think the best thing to have is an open ear without any judgment. And sometimes you just want someone who's completely removed from your team or your situation, which I totally understand. So it's just like, just try to find someone in your life or multiple people that you can really trust, you can really rely on. Don't be afraid to lean on those people. Like, they are there for you and they're there to help you. Including people like us, like, even if we're not super close with whoever would want to talk to us, like, we're here and we understand and we can just be an ear for whoever needs it, or even any advice as well. But honestly, like, just try to enjoy your time and be a positive light to others. Like, just try not to tear people down all the time. I think it's just so hard to not get caught up in your own issue or whatever is going on. But you have to remember that, like, you're part of a team and you're there as a greater whole and you're there to do something. And you just have to keep that in mind when you're going through stuff. It's just to, like, be a good teammate, be a good person, just figure out who you want to be, who's important to you, who you can talk to, what works for you. Totally different for everyone, but I think everyone figures it out along the way. And it, I mean, took me a while. Like, I'm just turned 23. So like, I'm still figuring it out. So there's literally no pressure to, have all these things figured out. Like, everyone kind of has a lot to work on.
I think you ended it on the perfect note, in my opinion. But again, I can't thank you enough for your time talking a little bit more in depth about your journey as a student athlete, the ups, the downs, everything in between. For everybody who's listening, we're going to link Mikaela's LinkedIn profile down below. So again, she's super active on there. She'd love to get to know you guys, reach out to her, establish a connection. She loves talking soccer, sports, also careers now that she is in the corporate world. But again, can't thank Mikaela enough for her time this evening. And if you guys have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to reach out to her.